The English hate talking about the weather and find it boring. True or false?
False.
It's normal in England to discuss personal income or politics during business lunches. True or false?
False.
In British business culture, humor is considered inappropriate in leadership roles. True or false?
False.
Hi, and welcome to ASHA Global Voices Podcast. My name is Tjasa Strle, and I'm a cross-cultural leadership coach and the creator of ASHA Global Voice. Together with my guests, we are sharing stories from around the world about different cultures, leadership, and human experiences that connect us. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button. Your support means the world to me. And now, let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, and welcome to ASHA Global Voices Podcast. I'm happy to introduce today's guest, Jonty Rooke, an ICF-accredited career coach and founder of the Synergist Coaching Company, who transitioned from his role as head of European sales at a global corporation to dedicate his time to mentoring the next generation of business leaders. With experience spanning multiple sectors from beauty to banking, Jonty helps clients worldwide develop their leadership and communication skills. A father of two, he's passionate about mental and physical well-being and is based in London, England. Hi, Jonty. It's a pleasure having you here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And I'm so excited to hear more about English culture and about your journey as well. And if we start with true or false statements, all three of them you said were false. And the first one was that the English hate talking about the weather and find it boring. You said that it's false. So you actually love talking about the weather, or how is it?
Well, I wouldn't say that we love talking about the weather, but I would say that it's a national pastime. It's almost like a sport. It's like a hobby. Everybody has an opinion about the weather, and it seems to be, whilst it's not something we go out of our way to enjoy, or we don't celebrate the fact that we talk about the weather. We certainly don't hate it. We see it very much as part of an interaction with somebody, even ones that you care deeply for and have a really close. If I speak to my mother, I'll talk to her about the weather. If I speak to someone I'm meeting for the first time on business, we will probably end up talking about the weather. So it's not a love or a hate thing. It's just a thing. So definitely get used to it, accept it, and make an informed opinion. Have an informed opinion about it would be my best advice.
That's a great insight. Thank you for sharing it. And the second one was that it's normal in England to discuss personal income or politics during business lunches. You said that this one is false. Tell us a bit more about it.
Yes, I mean, nobody knows what anyone else earns. No one ever discusses it. And actually, it's quite interesting. I think even generally speaking about money is considered poor form. It's not something that we're comfortable with. It's changing a little bit. People are more open to having conversations about that kind of thing. But I promise you, even my best friends I've known for 30, 40 years, I still have no idea what they earn. And I would be mortified if any of them asked me what I earned. It's an absolute no-go. So definitely not something to be dabbling in a business conversation. No.
And then likewise about politics, or how is it with politics?
Yes, I don't know. I have a slightly different personal view as opposed to my professional opinion on this. I do think it's something. For example, I met someone at a friend's birthday party on Saturday night who, after a few drinks and after we were talking about sport and all of this kind of stuff, politely the conversation moved towards what was next and what were his passions in life and his hobbies. And he declared to me that he is now standing to be a local councillor for a political party. And I asked him which political party it was, and it turns out it's one, or maybe one of the less mainstream parties. Let me just put it that way. Maybe on more of on the fringe side. And I really enjoyed that conversation, trying to understand what motivated him to be involved in this party, a party whose political views I don't necessarily, they don't necessarily sit comfortably with me, but I enjoyed that conversation. And my partner pointed out at the end how refreshing it was to see, people having conversations at different sides of the spectrum and being able to engage with curiosity. And but it was notable to her that she mentioned that. So I think particularly in this day and age, as my understanding is that politics can be a more divisive issue. That it's definitely not good form in a business setting where people are trying to maybe form partnerships or collaborations. It could be seen as a divisive thing. Now, that's not to say that it never happens. And certainly I engage in my father-in-law in quite heated debates about these kinds of things. But it tends to be with good humor and, maybe with less ardent or strident views that you insist on driving home because we're all different and we all have different views on this. And I think, to be curious maybe is mildly interesting, but I think you're opening yourself up to potential pitfalls if you go down that road. So my professional advice, would be to steer clear of that minefield.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious, do you, when you post job vacancies, do you transparently kind of also post a range for the position? Yeah?
It depends. It depends. I think if there's public money, public funds involved, I think there's more of a tendency to be transparent about pay structures within organizations. It's taxpayer money. So there is a tendency for more openness and more transparency. But that isn't always the case with private organizations or corporations. So typically it would be, one of these very vague statements that, better than market rate, or, we pay well, or something along those lines. But it's quite difficult. And I received some, there's some advice that I give people, or I've come across recently when people are talking about salaries. It's never to go, when you're having that discussion at the end of a job interview, it's advisable, particularly if you're applying for a job yourself, to ask about what that range might be. And typically the advice is you don't state what you're on in those situations. So, it's more like, oh, well, tell me about the range and tell me about the requirements that need to be met in order for the top of the range to be achieved. And then you go, oh, well, I think I meet those requirements. And it's the first rule of negotiation, isn't it, that you don't state your opening position. But yeah, it's not typical. You do have those conversations, obviously, if you're applying for a job and you're negotiating that. But quite often you'll find in the private sector, at least, that they won't be posting that kind of range. So it's sometimes quite difficult to gauge whether that's within your ballpark or not, actually.
Okay, great. I was just curious. Some countries already have laws in that department, so that it has to be transparent. And if we move to the third statement, which was, in British business culture, humor is considered inappropriate in leadership roles. And you said that this one is false.
Well, again, there might be a personal view and a professional view on this one. One of my values is actually to have fun. And so I believe that humor and fun at work is good for engagement, employee engagement, team engagement. And I think there's plenty of studies out there to suggest that if people are having fun, they're generally more productive. Say fun. If they're happy at work, they tend to be more engaged, and actually it drives productivity up. But there's a big but here. There's a caveat, of course, around inappropriate humor, and what in English terms can sometimes be referred to as banter, which can often be derogatory to some parties or exclusive for some parties. So Use it sparingly, but don't stop yourself from using it. If it's something that is natural to you, for you to sort of feel like you can't make a joke, can't, bring your full self to work, as they say sometimes, that if you have to play a role as a serious person, when maybe you're not, I think that can often stifle engagement and make for a slightly awkward working environment. Now, I would say that you can use humor and still be serious about what you do. You can not take yourself seriously, but you can take your job seriously. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but I see humor. I value humor. If I see it in other people, I find it's a point of connection. But again, it has to be appropriate. It has to, it has to be right. It can't be derogatory or inappropriate in any way. So that's my
Absolutely.
view.
I totally agree with you. But
Yeah.
if we kind of generalize a little bit, so you would say that in English culture, it's appropriate if a leader also makes jokes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would say so. Yeah.
Great. And of course, obviously, we are talking about English culture today. And you're from England, from London, as I said at the beginning when I introduced you. But I would also love if you can just kind of explain the difference between England and the United Kingdom.
Yes. Well, I guess like many large countries or states, there are, places of distinction in those large geographical areas. If we take North America, the United States of America, we know that the coastal areas are different, have a different demographic, a different viewpoint on things than maybe some of the more, Midwest states or something like that. And we understand that. And likewise, across Europe, we know that there are variances in and I've listened to some of your previous podcasters that talk about the difference between the North and the South, or even the difference between Austria and Germany and so on that border on each other. And I think maybe proximity is good and bad for this kind of thing. I think we can often see the differences when we're right next to somebody. We look for the points that we're different. Whereas if you take a bigger view or a more macro view of things, you will see that the similarities are the things that are most prevalent. So I think that is also true within the United Kingdom. So England is the largest sort of bit of it, but we've got Wales just on the, which side are we looking at? On the left-hand side, if you're looking at it on a map, we've got Scotland in the top, and then Northern Ireland forms a little bit of it, and then there's the which is on the top bit of the island of Ireland. So those are the states. Those are the areas that make up the United Kingdom. So there's England, and then there's Great Britain, which includes Wales and Scotland, and then there's the United Kingdom, which includes the bit of Northern Ireland and some of the Jersey and some of those and some of the territories around the world that are part of the United Kingdom. So it's quite interesting sometimes when you're filling in forms. It's what's your nationality, and it's like, I don't know. Am I English? Am I British? Do I come from the UK? There's all these labels.
So what is your nationality?
It's all of those and none of those, actually. If I can be so bold, I see myself more than anything else as a Londoner. We are arguably going towards a time where cities become as important, or these big hubs, and almost take on the role of states and so on. And actually, I think what I particularly like about London is that it's the melting pot of so many nationalities. It's, if you walk down the street in London, the languages that you'll hear, so I don't know. It's difficult. I grew up in South Africa. I've worked around Europe. I see myself as a citizen of the world, and I can see or think of no better city that personifies that kind of global citizen archetype, maybe as much as London. And I hope that anyone that's visited London from wherever they've come from in the world has felt welcome here. I'm very proud to be a Londoner, and I would argue that even though that's not what you fill in when you have to fill in your passport things, that's the identity that I prefer to take.
I love that. But still, I'm curious. So when you're filling a form, what's your nationality? What you put into it then? English?
You put British. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Complicated.
But it's not. I want to be clear about this. The Scottish people are very proudly Scottish. The Welsh people have a very strong national identity. Now we're all part of Britain, but there is very clear distinctions in the language, some of the cultural tropes that show up, and certainly the rivalry in sport between the nations, is very profound. And I think if you had someone on your podcast from Wales, which is part of Britain, part of the United Kingdom, and you were there asking them about what it was to be a British person, they would tell you how proudly Welsh they were. And I think likewise, if you had a Scot on, they would tell you how proudly Scottish they are.
Okay.
As an Englishman, I suppose, which is what I am, I was born in England, I would live in England, I'm less maybe proudly English. I don't know. I see myself maybe more as British. So I think the other parts of the United Kingdom maybe feel more strongly about their national identity. But as a Londoner, I see myself as a global
citizen. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for elaborating this. Really, really useful. And tell me, what 3 characteristics would you use to best describe the English? If you would have to choose 3.
Okay, characteristics. You see, I do think that humor comes into this. Maybe I'm looking at the English or the British identity through my own eyes, and I guess we all do, right? That's what we do. But I do see, and I think it's something that we export quite well. We are, there is a tag, the British humor. So I think that humor is a characteristic. I wouldn't say it's universal for all British people, of course, but I would think that it is one of the hallmarks that maybe you will find in many British people. I would like to think that the British people are, there's one of the characteristics, I think, that we like to think of ourselves as being fair play, fair people. I hope that's true, but I think there's a sense of justice and a sense of fairness that I like to think maybe characterizes the British. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I would say that we like to have a good time. We like music, we like dancing, we like festivals, we like drinking. There is we like travel. I mean, you can go nowhere without bumping into a Brit abroad, as we say. Sometimes, we don't cover ourselves in glory when we are traveling and enjoying ourselves. But I would think that we are sort of what's the word? I guess curious, or we like to explore and like to enjoy ourselves when we're doing that. I don't know if those are quite characteristics, but maybe those are some of the traits that you might see that show up in the British when you encounter them.
I would say it makes a lot of sense. If whenever I see while traveling British people, they are usually having good time.
Exactly, for better or worse.
For better or worse, but they look happy. So I'm happy for them as well. And tell me, how important is the concept of politeness in English culture? What would you say?
That's a good one. I think it's very, very important, and thank you for pointing out. I feel I maybe missed it. I mean, a classic British behavior would be you're sitting in a restaurant, your food was delivered cold. The waiter comes over to the table and goes, "Is everything all right?" And you go, "Oh yes, of course, it's absolutely fine. Thank you very much." And then you go, you would hate to sort of sort of say, no, this is, we would see that as sort of impolite, which is ridiculous because, like, it's not up to scratch, and they've asked you, so I think there is a little bit about, being inoffensive or being polite is almost to the point of, being sort of disingenuous, maybe almost lying rather than telling the truth because for fear of offending somebody else. So I think there is something about that kind of politeness that maybe is not necessarily so good. But yes, I think there's a sense that to be polite is important. But I don't know if that's, if it's seen as the, if it's such a strong and thing that we should be sort of holding up there as something. I think we are moving into an age where it's okay with respect if you can be a little bit more direct about things. But yeah.
Yeah, but it makes sense. Maybe it has to do something with avoiding conflict as well, valuing this politeness so highly.
Yeah, and something like queuing, for example. If you're standing in a queue and it's deeply offensive if someone tries to cut in the queue. You wouldn't say anything. You just sort of tut under your breath, which is ridiculous. So talk about fairness. There's fairness and there's politeness, and maybe the two don't always go hand in hand. So yes, so
Yeah.
sometimes we don't say what's on our mind actually because we're afraid of being impolite.
I understand, but I guess it's fair to say that in general, British or English people are highly value politeness. But
Yes,
yeah.
etiquette is important. There's this wonderful guy who is on Instagram. He talks about the Victorian English and how they went out of, it's all about the language that you use and how you say something as politely as possible. So you sort of tend to go around the houses weaving a wonderful story with all this beautiful language to disappoint someone somehow without it sounding disappointing. And we're moving away from that, I think. But that was definitely seen as an art or a skill, to be polite, particularly with your language.
And already now we are talking a little bit about communication already. What would you say? Are the English more direct or indirect in business communication, and especially when expressing disagreement?
Yeah, I mean, I think in business it's a bit different, if I'm honest. I think in business there is a sort of an expectation that you can get to the point a little bit. But I do remember I used to work with a Danish guy, and he sat me down once and he said, "Listen, I just want to be clear about this. If I am direct, if I'm blunt, if I cut straight to the chase, it's not that I'm being disrespectful. It's just the way we prefer it. So we get to business first, and then we talk about family." And I was like, whoa. In England, it's weather, it's family, it's what you did for the weekend, and then we'll get to talking about business. So I do think there is, there is a sort of an expectation around communication that you can start to sort of maybe look for, look to build rapport before you get to cut to the chase, as they say. So I think there's something around that. But we can be quite, we can say one thing and mean another thing. And I'm sure this is true. I hope this is true for not just the English or the British sensibility. But again, it's sort of avoiding offense, so if someone says to you, "Oh, you must come over for supper sometime," they don't mean you must come over for supper sometime. What we mean is, I like you, but that's the end of that. So if someone then goes, "Okay, let's get the diary out and let's book a date or something," the English like, "Oh wait, so it's we perhaps say something, and it might it might not necessarily be fair to take it at face value because we're being polite.
Okay, that's interesting. Really interesting insight. So what would you say then? How do you, based on what you just shared, I would say you are more indirect in communication, and especially more indirect if you can compare it to Danish people.
Right. That's an
But what
example.
would you say, for example, in business communication? Let's say that somebody did something wrong or you don't like something. What will be your style? How British people generally express kind of, let's say, or give critical feedback? Would you probably you still wouldn't go straight to the point, huh?
No, I mean, well, as a coach, as a leader, I'm a big fan of strength-based feedback anyway. So that sort of defaults to my preference, but it would be, catching people doing things right to start with. I'd like to commend you on this, and maybe we can talk about, how we do this differently or something like that. So I think there's yeah, I mean, that sort of direct feedback can sometimes be received quite badly. But again, one of the things I look to encourage my coachees or the people I work with or people in my team is to go out and solicit feedback. So I think if you're soliciting feedback, I think it's then fair to expect that you receive feedback. But this is a skill that gets built up over time. This is something that you need to practice because yeah, I think if you're giving feedback or giving, sort of some recommendations about some changes that need to be made in order for something to work for you, I think with all these things, it's a partnership, it's a collaboration. So there can be a little bit of, I'm going to give you this and expect this. I think that's maybe how I would suggest that you go about something like that.
Okay. Thank you for sharing this. And what would you say? What does it mean when an English person describes something as quite good? How can I interpret it?
Well, that's contextual. The word quite makes me think it's maybe not that good. So that might be a polite way of saying that was quite good. Maybe it could have been better.
Okay.
How do you read it when someone says it to you?
Yeah, quite good. I would. You think it's good, but it could be improved.
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. Yeah.
And how would you describe the leadership style in England? More hierarchical or egalitarian? In general.
So I would like to think that it's a little bit more egalitarian. I think the truth is probably it's still relatively hierarchical. Yeah, that's my experience anyway. Yeah.
Okay, fair to say. Of course, we are curious now about the English culture in general, and we both, and I hope also the listeners, we all know that we are generalizing a little bit, but this is
Yes.
how it is. You cannot talk about culture in any different way. But of course, we are different as humans as well.
Yeah, we are. And I would also, I think this is about the differences, I guess. And we are looking at the small variances or the small preferences, the small nuances of behavior, particularly in a business context. And I think what is interesting is that we are, I would like to think, as a global community, we are getting better at being more alike in a way. And I think it's worth suggesting that, go first to find out what is the same, right? Look for the similarities. Look for the places that you can build rapport. Look for many people would be parents, and that's a universal.
Sure.
So often we, in business, we all speak English. That's a fantastic thing and something, that I value so highly. It's great for me to be able to speak in English because it's my first language and so on. But I'm always in awe of people that, English is not their first language and we're able to, very much like we're doing today, have a deep and meaningful conversation and build rapport, build trust, in a language that you weren't born to speak. So I think that is a very high bar. So again, there are these areas where we're coming together. There are still local flavorings to things, but I do think we've got more in common with people. And my desire and it's, without getting into things like Brexit and all the rest of it, my desire would be for us to seek those similarities in each other and see where we can build partnerships and collaborations through communication, through open-mindedness. And I think if we go to seek those similarities in others, it's a better starting point than finding out more about the differences.
Jonty, I couldn't agree more with you. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful motivation for all of us to kind of keep in mind looking for similarities instead of differences to build rapport and to understand each other better. But on the other hand, I have to say, and that's why I'm also hosting this podcast, there are nuances between cultures, and I also
Yes.
feel like it's really great so that we keep an open mind, are curious about different cultures, and learn about these nuances so that we can build relationship even better and stronger on a long term. And
100%.
yeah. And also, I just wanted to say when you were saying, kind of giving me a compliment as well on my English, because my native language is Slovene. I have to be honest that even today, when I knew that we will have this conversation and I knew that you are a native English speaker, I kind of had a little bit of pressure, let's say. But nowadays I'm so used to it. I'm so used to it of speaking in English and everything. But still, whenever I speak with a native speaker, this kind of thought pops into my mind.
Sure.
Which is really interesting as well.
And if the shoe was on the other foot, I mean, I would be begging your forgiveness probably for the way I butchered your language. And I think you're extremely eloquent and make yourself very clear and very easy to understand. And I'm very grateful that you are able to speak English. And I was the president of the City of London Toastmasters organization, which is a public speaking organization. And the reason that I chose that club is because it has a very large international membership body. And I was mentoring a lot of people that had newly moved to London to do business. They were working in the city. And one of the things I always encouraged people to do, because quite often they would come to me and say, I need to soften my accent, or I need to change the way I speak. I need to speak more like an English person, or so on. And I hope I went some way in influencing them to be more proud of the way they spoke English, to not try and speak English like an English person, to embrace the accent or the manner within which they spoke. And I think, even within the UK, we have such a wide range of, if you spoke to someone from Liverpool, they would sound completely different to someone if you spoke to them from Newcastle. Some people, it's almost difficult to understand each other even within the UK. So I think there isn't a standard English. There isn't, this is what good English sounds like. I don't think that exists. I think if you can make yourself understood, and as you have done so eloquently today, it doesn't matter how you sound in a funny kind of way. So that's my little soapbox moment, if you like, my call to arms for anyone struggling or mastering English from whichever part of the world you're in. Embrace how well you're doing, and embrace the natural way within which you speak it. And from all of us, if I can speak on behalf of all English,
Yes.
I'm very grateful that you guys are trying so hard and really putting yourselves out there to learn English, because it's amazing, it's fantastic, and I'm very I'm admire. I'm an admirer of anyone that does so. So thank you.
Yeah, I love that, Jonty. Thank you so much for sharing your view. And I completely agree with you. We should be authentic even when speaking English. And we are, from different cultures, and that enriches also our world.
100%.
And tell me, Jonty, what's a common stereotype about English culture that you feel is misunderstood or oversimplified? What comes to mind?
So stereotype. I mean, I'm going to have to say this. It's the drinking thing, I think. I think we have a dreadful international reputation for being too fond of beer and lager. And, I hold my head in shame when these stories come to us from British people behaving very badly in Spain and on holiday, and they've got their suntan and and they are singing their songs and wearing their football shirts. I'm embarrassed, and I would like to apologize again to everyone from around the world for those small groups of people that behave so badly when they visit your country, your countries. So perhaps it's a stereotype that I don't think it's misunderstood. I think it's unfortunately well warranted, but I'd like to apologize for that.
So that means that in general, English people are drinkers. You like your beer.
Yes, but it's changing. I'm a member of a running club, and we meet every morning on a Saturday morning to go running around the parks in London. And I'm one of the people in the group, and so all the next generation, if you want to say the 20-year-olds, are getting together on a Saturday morning, first thing, to go out running, and people are meeting each other in running clubs. And in the past, it was always, you met someone in a pub, you had a few drinks, and then your inhibitions lowered, and then you could speak to the girl that you were afraid of speaking to, or something like this, after a few. Well, they call it Dutch courage, but it's a few pints of English beer, and that's how people used to meet. And I think that's changing. I think the next generation of people are, of people coming into business and coming into adulthood are much more health conscious, much more aware of maybe some of the the negative side effects of drinking, or being up late on a Friday night and so on. And actually, I think there's been a little bit of a change as well in the with the working from home, because people used to get together in the pubs after the offices and so on. It still happens by all means, but I think it's happening a bit less. So yes, you might see. British people, waking up early when they're on holiday and going for runs down the beach, rather than singing songs as they walk along the promenades on a Friday night now. But maybe maybe I'm too optimistic. But we'll see.
Maybe.
We'll see.
But great to hear.
Yeah.
And Jonty, you mentioned, of course, you are a Londoner, so you live in a global
Yes.
city. You worked in international settings with people from all
Correct.
around the world, also lived around the world. But I have to ask you, and listen carefully, this one is a tricky one, and please be honest.
Tricky question. Yeah, sure.
What's one English cultural trait you noticed most in yourself when working with people from other countries? Just say the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, what I notice in myself. Well, again, I think it can come down to, well, assuming that everyone can keep up with my, so if you speak, so I can, and it's not just for me, I think it's a lot of us, we tend to talk quickly. It's our first language, so we can rabbit on in our language, and we assume because someone is speaking English that they can follow us, that they understand the idiosyncrasies of our language. That like I say, that people can sometimes take at face value when we say something, and we can make assumptions, and I don't think that's fair. So I think it's something that you have to be aware of, something that you have to check. And I bet you if you play this back now, you'll see at times I've sped up my language and let me be.
No, but thankfully my English is so great, Jonty, so I didn't have any.
No, but if other people are listening in from around the world, I need to be aware that that maybe.
Of course.
I think that's something I'm definitely guilty
of. Okay, thank you for sharing this insight. And you made a shift from corporate sales to founding the Synergist Coaching Company. And I'm curious, what drove that change?
Okay. Do you want the full version or the edited version?
The best short and sweet version.
Fine, I'll give you the short version. The short version was I became a single father, so I couldn't travel for work. And when I was working in the fashion business, the global fashion business, I was traveling quite a bit for work. You know, it was in Munich or Paris or this kind of thing. And when I became a single father, I've got two daughters, as you mentioned at the top of the show. I had to stay at home and look after my kids. So I stopped working for this global organization, and I retrained as a coach. And that meant that I could work from my home in London and be able to take the girls to school and so on. So that's the short version. And then of course COVID happened very shortly after that, a couple of years after that. So I had a little corporate coaching company, and some of that business was affected by COVID. But then I also thought about what I could use my new coaching skills in this kind of era where most people, or many people, had lost their jobs through COVID. So I started to get specifically into career coaching, about helping people get back into work, and that really became my speciality. So now I wear two hats. One where I sort of C-suite and more senior execs, and help them make the next or navigate the next moves in their corporate career. But I also have a team of coaches that we work with, people who have been unemployed for a long time, and we help them get back to work as well. So that's what keeps it really interesting for me. But those coaching skills can be applied, regardless of the situation. But that's what took me. Life took me from corporate into coaching, and then I guess the world took me from coaching into career coaching.
Interesting story. Thank you for sharing it.
That was the short version. Can you imagine the long version?
It was just the right amount. I have to ask you, you said that life kind of pushed you in this direction, but what would you say so far? Is it a good direction for you?
It's the best direction. It's so wonderful. It's so wonderful. If I'm sure you know, what a difference coaching can make. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. I remember I was starting my coaching career, and I had a little advert that was on the internet, and it went global. Okay, so anyone could access it. You didn't need to be based in London. It wasn't about face-to-face meetings. And believe it or not, one of my first clients was a nun that was living in a cave, or she used to go and sit in outside Jerusalem somewhere. She was in a convent, and she was studying, or she was preparing to go to St. Petersburg to do some theological studies. And I was coaching her. And you just think, how did my life get me in this amazing direction? I was able to meet someone like that. And then next I was talking to someone who was a magician, who had lost his job in a resort in Spain somewhere and was looking to get back into. And I was just like, how lucky am I that I get to meet all these amazing people from all around the world, and hear about their life and help them overcome whatever little transition they're going through, or whatever big milestone they're looking to reach. And my life feels rich as a result of this opportunity to meet such a wide variety of people, and to somehow have a small impact in their life. So 100% delighted that life has nudged me in this direction.
So beautiful to hear that. And nowadays you are coaching leaders. Share with us one communication or leadership blind spot you see among your leaders, if anything comes to mind.
A blind spot.
Yeah, like something that they kind of don't notice in their leadership role or in their communication. If there's something that is kind of happening again and again?
I think I wouldn't, this might not be a communication piece, but it can, I do think, and you'll know this again from coaching, very often the biggest impact you can make in someone's life is when you help them overcome a belief that they have about a belief that is holding them back, a limiting belief. They don't believe that they can achieve, and very often they don't know that they believe that they can't achieve something. So I think when you have that moment in a coaching conversation where you reflect back to them about something that they've just said, which if someone else had said to them, they would say, no, that's not true. Or how dare you say that? And you help them realize that really the only thing that's holding them back is their mindset or their belief about themselves. And so if you ever have that moment to be able to reflect back to someone else and help them realize that blind spot about themselves, it's a joyous moment for both parties. It's a win-win situation, and that doesn't happen in every conversation. Very often it can be something that you say even without realizing it in a coaching conversation, and days later it sort of settles and they think about it and come back to you and go, you remember that thing that you said to me last week? And you go, no, what was it? And you almost don't even, sometimes you're not even aware of how you're unlocking that self-discovery, that self-awareness in somebody. And so I think that would be the thing I would look to uncover, maybe through honesty, through trust, that you can say something with the best intention. And through a strong relationship, a strong coaching relationship.
Yeah, these are such powerful moments. Thank you for sharing this insight.
Thank you for asking. Good question.
And in your view, what makes a truly impactful leader today?
I believe, I hope this is true. Let me put it that way. I hope it is true that the leaders that care about their team are the ones that make the biggest impact and do the best job. I do remember a conversation with someone once where I was like, I was sort of talking to this person that wanted to hire me as their coach, and I suggested something similar. He was saying, how can I get the best out of my team? I was like, well, if you really listen to them, if you really care about what motivates them, if you genuinely care about your team, I do think you'll be able to increase the productivity. And he goes, okay, well, how can you teach me to care, or how can I pretend to care, or something like that? It was a really like, no, you just have to care. Just care about your people. So I think that's the magic sauce, or whatever you want to call it, is if a leader has a genuine, engagement or belief in the care of their team, I can't see how you can go wrong with that. So I think to remind leaders that it's their responsibility, or maybe it's their opportunity. They have an opportunity to care about other people. And if they can prioritize that, then I think they'll make the biggest impact.
Thank you. And Jonty, you won't believe, but we are coming to an end of our conversation.
Tjasa, time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yes. Tell me, if you could imagine a better world to live in, what would that look like for people globally?
Well, globally, I think it's definitely, well, I'm a big believer, and I have to be a big believer because I'm the father of two amazing young women, that the future is female. And I think particularly when we're in London or even in Europe, we sometimes take for granted that this is the equality is within reach. And I think globally, I think we need to do more, particularly as a group of leaders, to make sure that the future is female, that it is fair, and that that women have as much chance as men, and that have as much opportunity to rise up organizations. I think we can, as business leaders, we can think about how we can make our businesses more female friendly, and more considerate of childcare responsibilities. So I'm on a little personal mission around that, and if I can get together an army of people, maybe all your listeners, if they can join forces with me, I'm sure many of them are already doing as much, and I'm sure you're doing everything you can to make sure that the world is a fairer place from that perspective. Then we're off to a decent start.
I love it. Of course, I'm a female, and this is truly a conscious as well, and a kind of empathetic wish. And yeah, I do hope that it will come true one day, like truly. Um, Thank you so much, Jonty, for everything that you shared. It was such a pleasure learning more about the English culture and about your journey. I had lots of fun, and I wish you all the best on your future journey.
Thank you, Tjasa. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my insights, for want of a better word, into what it means. And I really appreciate what you're doing to foster this global community of engaged people care about how they work with other people. So thank you very much.
Thank you.